I'm a Professor of Human Resource Management, and I'm also the Director of the Centre for People and Performance. And the Centre for People and Performance is a research and knowledge exchange centre which runs a range of different HRM projects, including things like recruitment and retention, employee opinion surveys, and looking at employee well-being. So I decided, although I'd like to be an academic, I should get some real-world experience first. So my first career, if you like, was as an HR manager, an HR practitioner. I joined a big financial services organisation as a graduate. Did a range of different training and then ended up in HR. And spent the next sort of 10, 12 years working in different HR roles across a CS management buyout company and a voluntary sector organisation. But during that time I did my masters because I was always aware that I would want to come into academia. That was kind of my long-term aim. And in my mid-30s I did that. I changed from being a practitioner and started to work as an academic. I came to Manchester Metropolitan University primarily because I had practitioner experience, and MMU is the University for World-Class Professionals. It's got quite a vocational approach to its education. I haven't been at MMU the whole time. I did leave for a period to spend some time at the University of Bradford, because as an academic I felt it was a good experience for me to work in more than one university and see how things worked sort of around the piece. And I've been back at Manchester Met just over a year now, and I came back to be a professor. It was a promotion, and to set up the Centre for People and Performance. When I came to academia, I already had 2 children, and I knew that if I wanted a career as an academic I would need to get a PhD. So I started my PhD with 2 young children, and in the middle of it had a third. So that was quite a busy time to sort of juggle working full-time as a lecturer, having 2 young children and a baby, and doing my PhD. I have various strategies for reconciling work and domestic demands. One of them is that in academia we're very fortunate that we have very flexible working patterns. Clearly I have to be here to teach, but you know, sort of the research side is a lot more flexible. I also am something of a control freak. The transition from practitioner to academic was, I think, something of a surprise, in that it is just such a completely different working environment. I think also there was a frustration for me in terms of the length of time the research process takes. So as a practitioner, if you do a good job, you can very quickly make a good reputation for yourself. As a researcher, you have to get research projects, you have to get research publications, and that particularly is the real slow part of the process. The Adult Social Care Employment Project has been selected as one of the business school's impact case studies for the forthcoming Research Excellence Framework exercise. So our research has been used to inform the 2011 Adult Social Care Recruitment and Retention Strategy for care workers. We also produced information and packs for all care homes, looking at how care workers could be managed more effectively, both to recruit and retain them. And then our work theoretically has also been quite important, working with CIPD and HR practitioners around how you deliver HR practice in what are low-skilled, low-paid sectors. As a practitioner, I worked at Lloyds TSB, I worked at a Sears management buyout, and I worked in a hospice. I set up an HR function. And then in sort of research roles, I've worked with Skills for Care. We're currently working with British BAE systems. I've worked with NHS quite a bit in looking at their improving working life standard. I don't have a typical day really. So some days I might be teaching, and I teach HR to a range of different groups. So part-time practitioners who come in the afternoon and the evening, full-time students, both postgrad and undergrad, and I teach quite a lot of research methods to postgrad and PhD students. I work quite a lot off campus, conducting research, going to research meetings, going to research conferences. So my quirky fact at the moment might not be that interesting to other people, but we're doing a big study looking at HR and legal professionals over 50, female people, that I talked about earlier, and we are trying to sort of position that as crone studies, which we're quite excited by and interested in. Things that I have particular interest in are looking at the role of HR practice and how it might improve both employee well-being and organisational performance. done projects around flexible working time flexibility, again how to balance that for both organisational and employee benefit. Psychological contracts, so how organisations set up expectations and manage employment relationships, again particularly in small firms. Future plans are around growing the Centre for People and Performance. That's a new centre. We've been quite successful in bringing projects in its first year, but there's a big job to do to grow that further. And we're quite excited by that because we think we're quite unusual in our emphasis both on organisational but employee outcomes as well. Perhaps beyond that, something like a Director of Research role might be something that I'd aspire to in due course, but that's some way down the line yet, I think. My lifelong ambition, I think to an extent I've achieved that in becoming a professor, so that was a big ambition for me, a specific concrete ambition. My wider ambition is to develop the centre, as I've said, and one of the things that I'd like to look back and say is that I made an impact in terms of worker well-being, and that sort of emphasis on HR for both worker and organisational benefit. And I think we're starting to see recognition of that in the field now, and I would like my name to be associated with that sort of in due course. I would encourage others to take up a career in research generally because it's a fascinating thing to do. At MMU, I would encourage people to take a career in research because there's a lot of support. We've got quite an ambitious agenda to be in the top 50 by 2020 in research terms. I think that's achievable, but I think there's a lot to do. And I think also our relationships to business, with business, mean that there's really good opportunity for getting our research findings out into practice, and that idea of our research not sitting in isolation or being something for academics, or not just for academics, but also being used in the real world to make a difference.